Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kate Murray, President and CEO of Canada's Stem Cell Network. Good afternoon to those of you who are in the Eastern or Central time zones, and good morning to those of you who are joining us from the West Coast. We're really pleased to have all of you with us today. Now, before we dive into the webinar, let me just give you a few housekeeping items to think about. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted to SCN's YouTube channel. Additionally, questions are welcome throughout the webinar. Please enter your questions into the Q&A function, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. All right, let's get going. It's exciting to be with you today to present this informational webinar on SCN's new Incubation Investment Award Program. But before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge that the work of Canada's Stem Cell Network happens from coast to coast and on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of many Indigenous peoples and nations, including the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, where SCN is headquartered. SCN honors, we recognize and respect these nations as the traditional stewards of the lands and waters where we work, we meet, and play. For those of you who have just joined us, once again, this is being recorded, and we will be taking questions through at the end of the presentation. Joining me today are Julia Pomerensky, founder and principal at Prosilience Biotech, and John Draper, Vice President, Research and Training for the Stem Cell Network. So this is an exciting milestone for SCN, for myself, our board of directors, our staff team. We've been working on the concept, the vision, design of this program for 24 months now. And I'd like to extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to Michael Rudnicki, Nadine Beaugère, Declan Hamill, Tamer Mohammed, and Gail Garland for their guidance and their insight over the past year and a half. So on to the next slide. Today, our agenda is focused on who is SCN, and then the most important, exciting pieces, the requirements for the Incubation Investment Award Program, followed by the Q&A. Okay, so about SCN. We're a national not-for-profit supported by the federal government. We have a mission to transform lives through regenerative medicine. We aim to do this through 4 program streams that are outlined on the slide. The network was originally formed by researchers for researchers almost 25 years ago, and it was built from and inspired by 2 Canadian researchers, Dr. James Till and Ernst McCullough, who proved the existence of stem cells in the early 60s. Since that time, Canadians have been leading the way. In fact, earlier this month, I received the results from an international survey of experts that was of people from nearly a dozen different countries. And they placed Canada as 3rd in the world, only behind the United States and Japan, for stem cell research and our contribution. So SCN and our country have much to be proud of. Now, SCN is looking to further drive the field forward with the introduction of our new Incubation Investment Award. Next slide. So this pilot program is designed to advance pre-seed and seed stage regenerative medicine companies. The program will support high potential ventures by enabling the generation of critical data packages, to attract third-party investment and accelerate company growth. The program will provide company investment ranging from $250,000 to $1 million, with funds released in tranches over 2 to 3 year periods, contingent on the achievement of defined scientific and business milestones. Ultimately, we hope this program will help to deliver economic and health benefits for Canadians by supporting the translation and commercialization of regenerative medicine technologies. And now I'm pleased to introduce John Draper to discuss how we define regenerative medicine. John?
Thank you very much, Kate. As you heard from Kate, Stem Cell Network's mandate focuses upon regenerative medicine. And so all of the work that we support must fit within that. Here you can see a definition that we operate under for what is regenerative medicine. And it is the branch of medicine that develops methods to regrow, repair, or replace damaged or diseased tissues, organs, or cells. Regenerative medicine includes the generation and use of therapeutic stem cells, tissue engineering, and the production of artificial organs. Of importance for research applications that are focused on cancer, they must be regenerative in nature and use stem cells for addressing the proposed problem. When we're considering eligibility of the projects that would be accepted under the Incubation Investment Award, these are the criteria that we'll be applying. The companies must be Canadian and developing a regenerative medicine technology that centers on one or more of the following topics. So number one, developing or testing a therapeutic approach that is regenerative in nature and can include a cell and/or gene therapy, tissue engineering technologies, or biomaterials. And it's important to note, if you are developing a gene therapy, that the gene therapy must be able to be demonstrated that it is applying these regenerative approaches. And number two would be addressing the role and function of stem cells in a tissue or disease. Three, using stem cells as a necessary component for generation of functional cell types. And finally, if you're investigating a small molecule biologic that acts on or is dependent on endogenous stem cells for its therapeutic effect. It's important to note that during the application process, it's incumbent on the applicants to actually make sure that they describe thoroughly and clearly how the work that they're proposing under the Incubation Investment Award falls within the regenerative medicine space. And that's going to be an important component when we're performing the eligibility evaluations. Kate, I'll hand it back over to you so you can continue.
Thanks, John. To qualify for the Incubation Investment Award, you need to be able to meet the criteria set out on this slide. For context, as a Canadian not-for-profit funded with Canadian taxpayer dollars, it's mandatory that Stem Cell Network is supporting Canadian companies. Eligible biotechs can't be non-subsidiary or must not be non-subsidiary independent firms. Additionally, I'd note that this program, the company must have filed their IP, own the rights to the IP. And finally, I'd stress that companies should be operating between technology readiness levels 3 and 6. You'll see here that we've given a high-level overview or definition for those TRLs, but we'd encourage you to look them up to make sure you fall within them. Okay, let's talk about money, as I know many of you are interested in understanding how much is available and when. So we've designed this program so that both pre-seed and seed stage biotechs can participate. For pre-seed stage companies, the value of the investment will range from $250,000 to $500,000 over a 3-year period. For seed stage companies, The amount available is 500,000 to $1 million. The overall envelope that SCN is working with is $3 million. Therefore, if a $1 million investment is made, that means that the review and the due diligence experts who have looked at your application believe the company is not just good, but excellent. So please take the time and consideration to put in a well-developed, thought-out application. There's a lot of money there. Okay, to the next slide. To disperse the award, SCN will use a SAFE mechanism. SAFE, otherwise known as a simple agreement for future equity, is what we will be deploying. And we're using this tool as our primary goal to support, incubate, de-risk Canadian regenerative medicine biotechs so that they are better positioned to attract follow-on investment and able to grow down the road. For companies that are invited to our stage 2 piece of the process, you'll receive a term sheet and a draft SAFE for review. We want to provide transparency and ensure that only those comfortable with the terms move forward. We don't want to waste anybody's valuable time. Okay, next slide. Let me give you a high-level overview of the process for this program. As I've noted before, this is 2 stages, with applications being made available on SCN's website starting September 8th. The first stage is really an open application for companies that believe they meet the eligible criteria that's outlined in our program guidelines. As you can see, we'll be assessing at stage 1 for company eligibility, development stage of the company, overall investment and commercial potential. Assessments will be done with support from experts, and we will provide a notification on October 22nd. We will not be providing in-depth feedback at this initial stage. I know some of you who come from the academic world will be comfortable and familiar with the peer review process. This will be different from that. It's important to note that we are not seeking confidential information at stage 1. However, when we move to stage 2, those invited companies will be required to provide confidential information. This is where we will do due diligence, and that due diligence will be supported with confidential data to be uploaded into a confidential data room. How many times can I say confidential? Information provided at this stage will be assessed by experts from Canada and the United States, and they will be asked to select top performing companies that they would like to hear from through a pitch presentation. Those companies will be asked to pitch to the full expert group in February. For pre-seed companies, there will be an opportunity to work with our partners, Capital BioVentures, on developing the pitch deck. And I'd encourage all of you to learn more about CBV by visiting their website. Following due diligence and pitching, the external committee will make a recommendation to SCN's board of directors and management regarding the companies they believe SCN should invest in. SCN's board will be responsible for the ultimate decision, and SCN management will work to finalize results and contracting so that funding can flow in spring 2026. As I noted earlier, we do use a continual review process, and this is mandatory. The main activities of the process are listed on the next slide. And as such, I won't really belabor it, but I will just stress that this is a mandatory part of our program. And now I'd like to ask Julia to step in and run through timelines and the application forms and pitch event information.
Thank you, Kate. So here we will be reviewing the application timelines. The Incubation Investment Award application opens on September 8th with the link to the application form available on the Stem Cell Network website. Applicants will have until September 26th to submit their applications as part of the Stage 1 process. Applicants will be notified via email if they are invited to Stage 2 of the application process no later than October 22nd. This notification email will also have instructions for the Stage 2 due diligence process. The deadline to submit all documents for the Stage 2 due diligence process is the 2nd of December, so companies have over 1 month to submit all of the required and requested information. Applicants will be notified by February 2nd if they are moving forward with the process to the final stage of this application process, which is the virtual pitch event held on February 9th and February 10th. Final notification for awards, if companies are successful, will be shared no later than March 31st. The award start date is expected in the spring of 2026. And as Kate has mentioned, there will be midterm progress and financial reviews and reporting scheduled throughout the term of the investment award. Next slide, please. In terms of application format, as Kate mentioned, the application process is split into two distinct stages. The Stage 1 application process is quite simple. Companies can access the link to an online application form on Stem Cell Network's website as of September 8th. A completed Stage 1 submission includes this online form, which does involve the submission of the company's non-confidential pitch deck. Stage 1 of the application process, Stage 2 of the application process is a confidential due diligence assessment. Applicants will be notified if they are invited to this Stage 2 via email from Stem Cell Network, again, no later than 22nd of October. In this email will be the instructions on how to access the reference materials and how to submit the Stage 2 requested information. This confidential due diligence assessment we will also be providing a one-way non-disclosure agreement, and this is to protect companies' confidential information. And the email will also include a copy of Stem Cell Network's safe investment terms, so we are being transparent in what we are offering to companies. In terms of the reference materials, companies will be provided with those application instructions and separately a Word document that lists specific due diligence questions. And in that same Word document, there will be space to answer the questions. And finally, we will also be sharing a budget template. The completed Stage 2 submission includes the signed non-disclosure agreement and all of the requested documents uploaded to one place, the company's data room. Next slide, please. For companies invited to the pitch event, it is a virtual event scheduled for February 9th and 10th. All of the requirements for the company pitch will be included in the Stage 2 instructions. In terms of evaluation, companies will be evaluated by the Incubation Investment Award Committee, both for the contents of the pitch deck itself and the presenter's ability to command the virtual room and their overall breadth of knowledge on the science and the business plan. And with that, back to you, John.
Thank you, Julia. So as you've heard, we're dispersing federal funds. So the research security policies of the federal government apply here for any for the use of federal funds. Regenerative medicine is classified as a sensitive technology research area, and regenerative medicine includes tissue engineering and gene therapy as well. So these requirements will apply to all applications to this Incubation Investment Award. Importantly, companies must meet these federal research security guidelines to be considered eligible, and they must complete the research security documentation as part of their stage 2 application submission. And that documentation includes attestation forms that confirm the applicant and any affiliates are not collaborating with or affiliated with entities that are on the federal government's named research organization list. The other document that will be required will be a risk mitigation form that describes the research security risk and also includes tailored mitigation steps that are associated with the research conducted with or by private sector entities associated with the application, including the company itself that is doing the application. Importantly, as noted, these requirements for research security do not come into play until applicants reach stage 2 of the application process, and it is at that point that they will be asked to complete a research security assessment. You can gather more details on the policy on sensitive technology research and affiliations of concern and the National Security Guidelines on Research Partnerships through the Incubation Investment Award website. And now move to the next page. To assist applicants in their preparation of their applications, the following resources are going to be made available. In the coming days, on the SCN website, the Incubation Investment Award Program guidelines and FAQs will become available, as well as the slides from this webinar, and the recording will be posted on SCN's YouTube channel. Of note, the program guidelines, FAQs, and webinar slides will also be translated into French. The application process itself will be available in English only, though. On September the 8th, the Stage 1 application instructions and online application form will become available, and there's a QR code there that links to the Incubation Investment Award webpage, which will allow you to land straight there and view those documents when they become available. Those who are registered for this webinar will be receiving an e-blast as soon as those application instructions and online forms become available. And it's also important to note that companies can also email researchscn@stemcellnetwork.ca to ask us questions, and we will try and respond within 48 hours. So with that, we're going to now move to a question and answer section, and I'll pass that forward to Kate.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Julia. Okay, we'll get started with our Q's and A's. So the first question that we have here is about university-backed safes, and do they count towards the 250 raised? And will the investment be structured as a single safe for the entire amount? So yes, university-backed safes do count. All sources of funding will count towards that 250 raised. And we're not going to get into a lot of the specifics around the safe right now. And we will follow up with stage 2 companies around those specifics once they're invited to come. Okay, I'm ready for the next question here. So the question was about cap valuation for the safe, and is it negotiable based on the nature of the business? We understand that valuations are individualized depending on the company, and so there will be conversations for stage 2 that are selected around valuation. Another safe question, is the safe investment considered dilutive funding? Not, it is considered dilutive funding. And Julia, do you want to chime in on this?
Yeah, sure. I think the two main types of funding generally, especially for early stage companies, are dilutive versus non-dilutive. And that really means whether or not the money is being given in exchange for equity. In this case, the answer is yes. That is how SAFE agreements work. It's just future equity as opposed to equity at the time of granting the SAFE. So this is not a grant in that it is a dilutive source of funding.
Okay. What specific criteria define a high potential pre-seed or seed stage regenerative medicine company for this program? John, do you want to take that one?
High potential? Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So it would be related to the ability of the technology to actually be translated over a particular term that is defined during the application process, and their ability to actually move something towards a therapeutic and a commercially viable product. I think is a summary of that.
Yep, that's great. Julia, did you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I think the question refers to stage one evaluations, and essentially, as is explained in the program guideline document, which will be available this afternoon online, there's essentially 4 different categories that companies are evaluated across for us to consider their overall potential. Obviously, looking at the technology itself and how well it's protected from an intellectual property perspective, and how much, how innovative and how it can make a significant health impact for patients. And then, of course, the team. Does the company have access to all of the relevant experts to help them put together a not just great science, but a great business plan? And then product development plan. And so, what does that look like? When will you start your clinical trial? Do you have a good sense of how long and how much money that will cost? And finally, some very pointed sort of corporate development type questions that help us understand your financing history, for example, and how much money you're looking to raise and those types of things. And so it's really 4 big topics with some pointed questions that should be fairly straightforward to answer.
Thanks, Julia. Thanks, Sean. So Canadian labs, can they apply for these projects, and can postdocs or PhD trainees participate if interested? This is an investment award aimed at incorporated Canadian biotechs. So if there's a connection to a lab, that's fine, but the funding is for the biotech company. This is not a traditional grant that you would see coming from Stem Cell Network for academic research. It's aimed at biotechs. And the follow-up, additionally, can insert grants, which are federal, good question, and discovery grants be counted as existing investment for the company? Julia.
Yeah, we set the minimum for eligibility around 250,000 for companies to have had raised to be considered eligible for this investment award. And the answer is yes. When we look at summing up all of the various amounts that the company specifically has raised, any grants that flow into the company to advance the company do count towards that minimum threshold.
And does the Canadian ownership of 51% include permanent residents? So that's a really good question. And I think I'd like to come back on that, but our initial thinking would be that permanent residents are eligible. Do option agreements enable companies to apply? And what if the company has out-licensed IP from a university rather than filing it independently? Julia.
Yes, I can answer the second half of that question. And so, yes, the intellectual property, as long as it is owned by the company and being developed by a Canadian company, is okay. And so, if you have licensed in the technology to develop it, that is fine. I will need some clarity in terms of the first half of this question. If the
So,
individual,
perfect. So yeah, maybe they could follow up via email.
yeah, that would be a good idea.
Will the funding be divided between the two categories, pre-seed and seed? And two, what are the definitions of pre-seed and seed staged companies? And finally, three, is there a cap on the total amount these companies can have raised to date? So, Kate, maybe you can answer, will the funding be divided between two categories, pre-seed and seed?
So it's not an equal split. It will depend on the quality of the applications that are received. Julia, do you want to take on the next part?
Yeah, sure. Definitions of pre-seed versus seed staged companies, as I'm sure this audience can appreciate, um, there is a little bit of give and take with how we define these things. How we are approaching it is based on three different specific areas. Number one, how much money has the company actually raised to date? Number two, how many employees does the company have working towards advancing the company? And number three, and probably the most important one, is at what stage is the company when we think about the technology readiness levels that we have, that we are tying some of this to. They specifically are referring to how ready your technology is to launch into human clinical testing, for instance. And so companies that are seed stage will be further along towards launching their clinical study. I'm just reading the third part of the question. No, there is not a cap on how much money these companies may have raised. And so if you've raised several $1,000,000 and not just the 250 bare minimum, that is fantastic. And we take that as a great sign that your company has a high degree of potential. And so we do encourage you to apply.
Okay. There's also been a question about an example of what a genetic therapeutic that is regenerative or non-regenerative is. And I'm wondering, John, if you want to offer a little clarification on that.
Sure. The types of therapies that we consider to be regenerative are those in which some kind of repair, replacement, or regrowth is occurring within the therapeutic after the administration of it. And these would be things like ex vivo modification of cell types with a therapy that repairs in some way a genetic lesion or mutation. And then it's placed back into the entity, and you're targeting, for instance, stem cells or progenitor cells, and actually also potentially somatic cells. And then those cells, when they're placed and when they're grafted back in, they would be participating in some form of regeneration within the process. In in vivo gene therapies as well that deliver a regenerative molecule of some variety. So, for instance, a neurotrophic factor that would actually lead to regeneration in potentially spinal cord or something that would be fall within scope. Other examples may be iPSC cells, which have been genetically modified and then differentiated into cell types that then would be placed within within a therapeutically damaged or a damaged site to cause some kind of repair, that would also fall within scope. Does that answer that, Kate?
Yeah, that's great. And so, I just encourage people in their applications to demonstrate.
I think Kate's going to say to demonstrate clearly that that the technology that you're developing is regenerative in some form or fashion. It will be part of the eligibility criteria that are evaluated, and unless there's really clear description of how this falls within a regenerative medicine, it could be that your application could be triaged if it's not really providing that clarity about the regenerative nature of the therapeutic that's been developed.
Okay. John, I'm going to ask you to continue on reading the questions.
Sure. Are there any restrictions on what the funding can be spent on for the company, by the company, sorry. For example, is the funding intended to be focused on R&D spending mainly, or biz development, or something, or some combination of this, or something else? Julia?
Yes, happy to answer. There will be some restrictions, and these will be part of the stage 2 application instructions, but the restrictions are actually quite minimal. We very much encourage you to spend the funds on things that advance your company to that next value inflection milestone, and business development, seeking, pharma partnerships, seeking additional financing, and these types of activities we understand are very important to fund, and we very much encourage those to be funded by the SCN award. And so this is not traditional grant funding to be spent exclusively on R&D. The scope is very broad.
Kate, do you have anything to add, or is that covering everything? Perfect. Eligibility. If I'm a international CEO and majority shareholder of a Canadian company, am I still eligible to apply? Kate.
So this is meant to support Canadian biotechs, and so I think that it would be worth applying at the stage 1 piece. And you say you're an international CEO. I guess the part of the question there would be, what is your nationality? But ideally, this is for Canadian companies, and that's the key piece of this.
Okay, excellent. Regarding the IP option, does the company gain exclusive access to the IP once it raises the specific trigger amount, for example, 2 million? I'll open it up to whoever wants to answer.
Yeah, I think this was a clarifying question, perhaps based on something we saw earlier. I believe what is being asked is whether or not it's acceptable to have an option to bring in IP at the time of applying for the SCN award. And unfortunately, the answer, if that is indeed the question, the answer is no. At the time of application, you must already have the commercialization rights to the IP, not an option to bring in the IP. You must already own the commercialization rights for the IP you are looking to develop at the time of applying for the award.
Okay, on that, I think we have cycled through the majority of questions for today, and we are coming to the end. So I want to encourage those of you who are interested to visit our website to get the program guidelines and FAQs. We'd love to see you there and come and join us. To find out more about TMM, please visit our website. And on that, thank you, Julia. Thank you, John. Appreciate your support today. Looking forward to seeing some great applications. Have a good afternoon.